Welcome to RECO12. My name is Justin, and I am a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a recovering addict, and am blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking this path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented many fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds. Today's speaker for the 177th meeting is Gary M., a first-timer on RECO12, who will be speaking on his coming to understand that he is a grateful alcoholic. And we'll get to his talk in the Q&A afterwards in just a minute. First, for a little bit of business. The RECO12 family of recovery resources continues to grow and have more and more resources for the addict and the loved ones of those addicted. You should be aware of RECO12's shares, as we've had that going for about 3 months now. But if not, go check it out and record a share and hear others' shares there. We have also released 2 more weekly podcasts just this last week. The RECO12 Big Book Roundtable, which comes out every Thursday, as well as the RECO12 Presents Noodle It Out with Nikki M., which comes out every Tuesday. Both of these podcasts, and as well as RECO12 Shares, which comes out every Wednesday, are live and can be found on virtually every podcast platform out there. We also recently added another live speaker meeting, and it records at a time that's more conducive to our European, Asian, and African listeners. And you can listen to that one. That goes on most Wednesdays at 9 a.m. GMT, so 9 a.m. London time. And that'll happen about every other Wednesday for now as it ramps up. It's hosted by a past guest speaker of RECO12, Karen A. in Israel, and we recorded and released the first episode about 2 weeks ago. If you missed it, you can listen on your favorite podcast platform. I'm super excited about all of these resources and more to come. Your donations and subscriptions are helping make this all possible, as there are costs to build and maintain all of them. On that note, RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. I want to thank a few of our spearheads and donors. Thank you, Lisa, Misty, and Storm, for your monthly spearhead support. If you would like to become a spearhead and support RECO12 in our mission, please consider going to www.reco12.com/support. That's RECO12.com/support. And make either a one-time donation or become a monthly spearhead donor. We look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce today's speaker for today. His name is Gary M., and here's a little bit about Gary. Gary was born and raised on Long Island and struggled with alcoholism since his early teens, which took him to places he never wants to go again. Arrested at 16 for assaulting a police officer, multiple arrests over the following several years, and he was a few blocks north of the World Trade Center on 9/11. AWOL from his first real job on Wall Street in 2002, rehab and back out until he was given the gift of sobriety. Determined to break free from the cycle of self-destruction, he embarked on a remarkable journey of recovery. Today, Gary is an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in New York, married to the love of his life and father of 2 amazing children, of which he owes all to his sobriety. Gary is now launching his own podcast, the Begin Again podcast, and I'll put that in the chat here. But take it away, Gary. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate you having me on. It really is a privilege to be here, and congratulations on all the growth and all the success of RECO12. It's really amazing to hear that as you were introducing and speaking off camera. I was going to talk, my topic obviously is a grateful alcoholic, and that took me a while to come around to that term. My bio, if you will, what you described, you kind of touched on all the stuff and what kind of led me here and what got me into the rooms of AA. But so just really quick, I grew up in Long Island. I think I grew up in a regular, normal childhood, out in bicycles, and, it was the 80s. I had a great group of buddies who I still have the same group of buddies today. We played sports. We had a big park down the street, and, we normal childhood, we were out first thing in the morning. We were back home when it got dark. And I come from a town, it's called Port Washington. It's a very mixed town. And in fact, I grew up in the kind of, lack of a better word, a little bit of rougher area, blue collar area. But if you walked up like a mile up the street and hopped over a couple of fences, you were in one of the wealthiest areas in the country called Sands Point. And so we all kind of went to school there. And I bring that up because I think early on I kind of was, I was uncomfortable. I had a lot of uncomfortability. And this is stuff I didn't realize until I had gotten sober, years later as an adult. I didn't realize really how uncomfortable I was in my own skin. I had, my mom and dad, they're still together. A lot of, like I said, the same group, a lot of broken families or in out of my group, if you will, but my parents are still together. But I had a very active dad as a young kid, and I'd see stuff that most, 8, 9, 10-year-olds probably shouldn't see. A lot of rough guys in and out of the house, doing cocaine and doing all sorts of stuff. I was always finding cocaine straws, or I was grabbing my spoon for my Cheerios, if you will, and, big bags of weed, just, a lot of stuff that, a young kid probably shouldn't be watching. And I say that, I think that's kind of led to my uncomfortability as a young age. And I say that again, as not really understanding that as a young boy, I should say. And, that's where I grew up. I grew up in that kind of household, and, they were loving. My parents still loving. They were, I said it before, everyone does the best they can. And I know that they did. And, fast forward a little bit later, and, like typical kids, I guess I was maybe a little younger than most, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. We start, stealing taking some swigs of booze from our friends' parents, mom's liquor cabinet, asking guys to buy us beers on the weekends as we get a little older. And, fast forward, as you said, I'm 16 years old. I'm the captain of my varsity baseball team. It's the night before Thanksgiving. This is a long story. I'll keep it short. I go out. I'm with some friends all day. I go out that night. It's a big night in my town. I think it's a big night in most towns. And a fight breaks out inside the bar night before Thanksgiving with my older cousins. It spills into the street, and I wake up Thanksgiving morning, first degree assault of a police officer. Apparently I went and slugged the police officer in his nose because he was going to arrest my cousin. And, that I bring that up and I talk about that, a lot, just because it was such a big event in my life. It kind of changed my entire trajectory. People looked at me a little differently in my town, I guess. And, that was my first foray into a lot of trouble. And I love the saying, and it definitely applies to me that, I didn't get in trouble every time I was drinking. But every time I got in trouble, I was drinking and I was drunk, and that was me. And, I don't want to go on a drunken log, but, I've had multiple DWIs. I had a violent side. I used to get into a lot of fights. I've been arrested for assault numerous times. I'm not proud of. But, it was this chip on my shoulder, I think, that started, when I was younger, seeing some of that stuff as a kid. And, I've heard this too. And, I've been around. My sobriety date, I should probably mention that, is May 13th, 2006. And, just celebrating 17 years of sobriety. If you knew me then, that was an impossibility. I think I would have been voted the last person that you knew to find sobriety. But my higher power had a different idea for me. And I always had a foxhole relationship with a higher power. Every time I was in a bad spot, get me out of this one, God, I won't do it again. I won't drive this car again like this. Get me out of this one, God. And, I do it again the next night or the next week or the next weekend. And, and on and on and on. That's how I rolled. I mentioned the trouble that I gotten into. I've been AWOL from a job. I went on a bender, didn't show up, didn't call. It was my first real job. I thought I was going to be a career bartender early on. Really bright aspirations for a young man. I was going to bartend in New York in the summers, and I was going to bartend in Key West, Florida in the winters, because I went there first year of college. I went there on spring break, and I moved there a couple months later, just to give you an idea what, my mindset. But, I found booze, and booze did all the things that, you hear about. I was uncomfortable in my own skin. I've heard this recently, and alcohol made me feel comfortable. I was able to approach people. I thought, to have confidence, but what it was really doing was masking everything. I was so torn, and there was so much chaos inside of me, and I was masking it. And I was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'd be the nicest guy in the place, and a drop of a dime, I'd be the nastiest. And you knew it. You knew it both ways. Even if I was the nicest, I was the loudest one in there. I was a what's the word? I'm drawing a blank. I was just, I was completely all over the place, and everyone knew it. And I was also the last person to realize that I had a problem with alcohol. It was a gigantic sign all over me, pointing at me pretty much for years. And I was the last person to see it. But so, I was AWOL. Like I said, I went to a rehab up in upstate New York from going AWOL at that job, St. Christopher's. It was called the Miracle on the Mountain. And I went up there in 2002. You mentioned in my bio, I was downtown New York in 2000, September 11th. Saw some stuff that day that we all did. We're all part of it. Doesn't matter where you were. But I was pretty close. And I feel like for, months on end, I was just at a memorial or another service, and it was just nonstop. And, I bring that up too. I asked myself, why do I bring up 9/11 a lot? And I think, there's obviously something there because I tend to bring it up, but there was the first time that I really didn't want to, I didn't have hope. I thought I wanted to have a family when I was, younger. And when that happened, I was like, I don't want to bring a kid into this world. And I really, I don't want to say starting. I was already in a dark place, but I went a little darker. And, my drinking would be, I would be with my buddies, like I said, or people from work who, there were no angels, but I was getting so dark that I would Irish exit, and I would bail on them, and I'd go on my own because I wanted to be on my own and loved to be alone, loved to be an isolator. I was a sick guy, and I was a young guy at the time. And, I mentioned again, all the trouble I've got, but here was an eye opener for me. I was, 23, 24 years old, and I was sitting at my desk, and I was staring at my desk all day, and I was talking to myself all day long, telling myself, I'm not going to go out tonight. No, I'm not going to drink tonight. I'm not going to drink tonight. And I did that. I did this over and over and over. And, lunchtime comes, 12 o'clock. You feel a little bit better, but I'm still not drinking tonight. Definitely not drinking tonight. And then, 5 o'clock comes, and lo and behold, I'm out, and I'm out all night, and I don't come home. And it was 50-50 whether I was going to make it to work. And so that's where I was. That's how, just to give you a glimpse of my drinking. So, like I mentioned, I went up to this rehab in 2002, and I fought it. I came back home. I was in and out for 4 years, and I don't know what happened, what came over me. I was sitting in my apartment in New York City, West 12th Street. It's a great area, if anyone knows it out there. I was sitting in my apartment, May 12th, 2006, and something came over me, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And it was a different feeling this time. And my mom is one of 10. I'm the first grandchild on my mom's side. And I remember thinking of all my younger cousins because they kind of looked up to me. I played sports. I was working in New York City. It was like a big deal to kind of everybody. And they looked up to me. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what are they going to think of you? Is this what you're supposed to be showing them? Like, what are they going to be? Is this what do you want them to be like you are right now? Because this is what you're showing them. And I don't know, again, what came over me. I had told myself I was never going to go to AA again. I knew I'd probably have to stop drinking one day, but I was never going back to AA ever again. And I found myself the next day spilling out all my booze in my apartment and calling intergroup Alcoholics Anonymous in New York City. And I went to a meeting May 13th, 2006, and I haven't had a drink or a drug since. And which, again, that was, if you knew me before, that was, you hear it all the time. We hear all these miracles in these rooms, and that's one of the reasons why I started my podcast. But I don't want to touch upon that right now. But so here I am early on, and I'm in, I'm in the rooms of AA, and for the first time, I'm doing, if a stranger came up to me and said, "Hey man, here's my number, give me a call," every instinct in my body is like, I'm not calling some stranger, but this time I'm like, All right, this makes no sense, but I'm going to do it because I need to do so. Every time I've tried this, I've got it wrong. These people seem to have been doing it right. They're sober. They seem to be happy too. And you heard the term early on, grateful alcoholic. And I heard you heard other people saying the obsession to drink has been lifted. And I sat there early on and I called BS on both of those. And if I heard the obsession was lifted, I was like, well, what are you doing here? Like, what do you mean? Maybe you're not an alcoholic. Little did I know, and you're a grateful alcoholic. I'm like, listen, we're here, right? But don't tell me that you're happy about this. You're happy to be here. How could you possibly be grateful for this? And like I said, I've been blessed. I've been coming around for a fair amount of time. 17 years is a long time. And, I have, I mentioned in my bio too, I have my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. She's been through the ringer. She was with me all the time. She stuck with me through thick and thin, always. And she had given at my 10-year anniversary, and we have 2 children now. Daughter's 10, my son's 8, and never seen their dad drunk. And I never seen their dad with a drink in his body. And I say that because even if I took a drink right now, even if I wasn't acting out all the stuff that I kind of described quickly, how I was when I did drink, there would be a different energy within me. There would be a different aura, and they would sense it, and they would immediately see a different dad immediately. And I say that knowing that, that one drink's going to lead to another, and I'll be right back to where I was. And we talk about a lot in here, like to live in faith and not fear. That's one real healthy fear of mine that I am holding on to, is that I'm terrified to go back out there, because I don't know, nor do I want to try or test it if I have another comeback, another day one. So I was mentioning my wife had given me a card on my 10-year anniversary. She gives me a card every year on my anniversary. And she said, we're so proud of you, and she said, just think, if you hadn't gotten sober, 2 little ones here, they wouldn't even exist. They wouldn't be here. And, I have an ego that wants to contemplate that. But the truth is, that is the God's honest truth for me, for this person. And you hear it a lot, where I've heard it before, this concept of, property of AA, or which is for me, I got sober in AA, or property of your sobriety, and you can put a sticker on everything. And for me, that is just so, so true. Everything that I own, my shoes, my, car, but who cares about that stuff? I'm talking about the real stuff, like things like integrity, things like responsibility. I was an adult in stature 17 plus years ago, but I was a scared little child inside. And when I was scared, I was always backed into a corner. And at least in my mind, I was backed into a corner. And that's why I think I acted out. I think that's part of my story. I was never good enough. I wasn't good looking enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't athletic at everything. I was not enough. But alcohol, I did more than anyone. It was still not enough. And, I found drugs a little later in my story. It also did was allow me to drink more. And I hated cocaine for the longest time because of stuff I saw as a kid. And just like, people I'm sure on this podcast can relate to, I found it and I was all in, and it was to the point where my friends, if they would kind of do it a little recreationally, if you will, and they had to hide it from me, because once it was near me, it was gone. And I'd be like, get some more. And that's just how I did. That's how I did everything. And so this gratitude, right? These are terms that, they weren't flying off my tongue 17 years ago. They weren't words that I lived by. I have a relationship with a higher power. And that's another thing. I'm a little thick-headed, and I came in here just to stop drinking. That's all I tried to do. And, it took me a while to realize, even though going through the steps, but it took me I'm a little hard-headed. It took me a little while to realize there is a huge higher power, God component to this. For me, it's God. Whatever your higher power, your higher power of your choosing, at least in my program. And for me, that's God. And, may you find him now. I found him. And, I start my day every morning on my knees in gratitude and thanks, just thanking him for the day, thanking him for giving me the gift of sobriety. Thank you for the love that surrounds my life and my family, and please let me help someone today. And, you know, I kind of think I touched upon this before we started, but I had this epiphany almost that, everything that I've done to myself or every bad thing that I think has happened to me, I want to turn it on its head. I want it to be a source of inspiration, perhaps, and a source to help people. And as I mentioned at the beginning, or you mentioned, I just launched a podcast, and it's called the Begin Again Podcast. And the mantra of the podcast is to help one person today. And it's not me. It's not me, giving direction. It's stories of people coming on and sharing their story. Because I remember early on for me, when I heard, people higher above me, or even celebrities, maybe athletes that I kind of looked up to that were sober, like that was a big help for me. And I'm in meetings all the time, and I'm hearing these just miracle stories, and it kind of just overcame me that, I think more people than the 15 or 30 or 50 people in this room could potentially benefit to hear some of these stories. And that's kind of how the podcast was launched. And, everything this is, so you take my alcoholism and my addiction, and I'm going to try my best to turn it on its head to help other people. Right. And that's step 12. And I kind of chuckle at myself because I do have sponsees, but I always felt like I could do more, and I always wanted to do more on that side of helping people. And as this kind of quickly evolved as an idea, and this has only been an idea for, a couple of months really, and now it's already launched, this could potentially help people. And, what's better than that? There's nothing better than to potentially help someone, just like RECO12 is helping people. And, I say a prayer right before every time I speak, and I said it right before I came on here to, God, please speak through me, and please let me help one person out there today. And again, this is all stuff, and I am super grateful for it. I was overcome, listening to your intro, Justin, and I was just, honest to God, I was overcome with gratitude that I have the privilege to sit here and be on this podcast with you, and hopefully reach one person today, maybe more than one person, but at least one. That's what the prayer is, and for that, I'm super, super grateful. So if I zoom out at my life, and my topic, like we said, is finding, becoming grateful alcoholic. I am about as grateful an alcoholic as I know. And like I said, I owe everything to my sobriety, which means I owe everything to my higher power. And, the term, put your sobriety first, that one I had a hard time with. It's all kind of connected for me, but it is, because if I put anything before it, I can lose it. And like I said, that's a healthy fear of mine. And, I'm super grateful to be here. I hope my message of being a grateful alcoholic and gratitude has come through, and I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to the questions. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Thank you so much, Gary. I love that. And thanks for expressing in such a good way the gratitude, the process that took you to where eventually you could say, I'm a grateful alcoholic. Because I remember the day when I was able to say, you know what, I'm grateful for my addiction. This has made a huge difference in my life. And it was it's a game changer. That perception shift really changes things. I want to talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned, and I'm going to hit on this. This was towards the end of your share. You said that the experiences that you've gone through in your life, you want to be able to use those to help others. And that's one of the ninth step promises from the big book. Our past, we won't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Our past can be our greatest asset. How do you try to apply that in your daily life as you encounter people who may be at the bottom?
Well, I think that in a nutshell is what, meetings do, and meeting newcomers, right? And people coming in, and how do I apply that is and it's as simple as sharing my story. Right. But again, as far as, like I said, turning everything on its head, like I'll say one other thing. I had a widowmaker heart attack 4 years ago. I was walking to the train station, and I'm a relatively healthy guy. I'm relatively decent shape, and it's, whatever you want to call it, fluke or, family history happened on the way. And, it was a big deal for me. And part of my, visions of grandeur with the podcast is to have somewhere along the line a healthy heart kind of avenue, if you will, to educate people on taking care of themselves, and especially their heart conditions, or if they have heart condition, taking care of themselves really. And, that's something that, again, it takes for me, this is a personal, traumatic event. And it was only 4 years ago, to try to turn that into a positive. Me getting in trouble when I was younger, when I was 16, like I said, I had a hard time. I had a lot of shame behind that. I couldn't see, friends, parents. I was very shameful. But now there's a bit of, power to that, to my story with that, at such a young age, getting in trouble, that can make me help perhaps, grow this podcast of mine to help more people. So what am I saying in a nutshell is just like literally taking every bad thing. I don't like to say that happened to me, because I did most of it to myself. Some of it, yes, happened to me, some things I saw, but it's to turn it on its head and to try to help someone with it.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I appreciate that perspective. Good stuff. We've got a couple of questions that have come from the live audience, and a reminder to our live audience: if you do have a question, please type it in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we'll get to those as they come in. We'll start with this one from Ashley. Ashley asks, how do you face personal failures or mistakes with gratitude?
Personal failures or mistakes with gratitude. That's a good question. I'm big in the saying of, I think it's a famous kind of poem, if you will. Yesterday's, I'm going to botch it, but it's yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. Live in today. That's why today, live in the present. That's why it's a gift. It's a present, live in the gift. So listen, I'm a human being. Yes, I look back and I have, like I said, shame and I have guilt, but I don't live there anymore because I'm a different person. And so, of course, I'm going to fail. And of course, let me bring the question back up. Of course, I'm going to have things that are going to pop up. But what I used to do is I used to run from those things. When I did something, I'd run from it. Today, I very, very quickly get in front of it. And if I make a mistake or make a failure, I get in front of it and I look you in the eye and I tell you, this happened. I did this. It was a mistake. So when I do that, I am grateful that I do that, because I wasn't able to do that in the past. And today I am able to do it. So I think that hopefully answers your question. That's how I do it today.
Beautiful. And I love that concept of getting in front of it. When I make a mistake, own it quickly, because, well, my track record through addiction was, when I make a mistake, I try and hide, I try and cover it up, I try and point the finger somewhere else. And eventually I'm not going to get away with that. Eventually it's going to come back to me, and those people that I was pointing fingers at are going to know, and I'm going to be in big trouble. So yeah.
100%. Yes.
Excellent. All right. Next question comes in from Amanda. Amanda asks, what are your favorite instructions from the big book that you're currently sitting with these days?
My favorite instructions of the big book. It's funny, when I went through the steps, and I've been through the steps, all 12 steps many times, and I always kind of chuckle. And I have a big book group that I read with on Monday nights, and we've read it, started in the pandemic, and we read it. We started branching off into other books, but we've read the big book more than anything. And when you read the big book and you go through the steps 6 and 7 are the quickest ones. And I remember when I first came in, like, all right, I kind of checked those boxes. It was quick, because if you do, again, in the big book, it's like a couple of paragraphs, but those are your defects of character, step 6 and 7, and it's addressing those defects of character. So I am really focused on step 6 and 7. Again, I say that almost tongue in cheek, because for so long it was like, we kind of blasted through those, but those are like the real, as far as me being a sober man today and having emotional sobriety, is step 6 and 7, and it's those defects of character and the 7-step prayer. I read the 7-step prayer and the 3rd step prayer every morning. So, God, please remove these defects of character because I have them. I'm a human being, and one thing I asked my higher power for more than anything lately is patience. I don't know if that's in the big book, but it's part of my defects. I had a character defect of mine. And so I think if you which am I leaning on now? I think it's step 6 and 7 from the big book.
I love that. And I'm kind of the same way. I remember when I first went through the steps with my sponsor, he said, "All right, are you willing to have these defects of character taken away?" I was like, "Yep, check."
Right.
Let's say the prayer. Check. 6 and 7 are done. Let's go.
Right.
And I was working with a sponsee a few years later. And at the end, I was like, "Okay, so what have been the most meaningful things to you?" And he said, "Steps 6 and 7." I was like, "What?" We checked through that. What do you mean? And he had that same thought. You know what? This is where everything is, and it made me refocus and rethink through those. So thank you for sharing that and reminding me of that. Sure. All right, I have another question for you. You and I really identify with this. You talked about being alone, isolation being kind of your go-to in addiction and really when not in recovery. And I'm still one who I feel that I need to be in solitude to really recharge. Sometimes I just need to get away. But how do you do that healthily now? How can you be in solitude and recharge rather than run and isolate in the corner and just let the world beat you up in that time?
Well, this is, I think, kind of an easy one for me because I have found hiking over the last 5 or 6 years, and there is nothing more healthier for me than to be alone, exercising, having a nice sweat, but seeing some. And I'm on Long Island. There's not like a lot of mountains here, but we get some hills, and just to be alone for an hour, or even if it's around the street, going for a walk. I think that's my time to healthily isolate. And it's funny, when I'm, they say move a foot, change a thought, when you're exercising, for me, it really helps. And I kind of, like I said, I've always kind of been athletic. I always played sports growing up, but when the pandemic hit, early on, sitting in our houses, all of us, like, really got to me, and you can isolate by yourself just in a household of 4 or 5, whatever your household is. And it was really bad. And I went for a walk, and that walk did wonders for me. And I said, I'm going to go for a walk again tomorrow. And it really helped me, going, that anxiety, I guess, that locked in anxiety that we all had to endure. But I knew I was going on that walk at the end of the day or at some point, and it's something I do now. And that's kind of how I really started finding trails and hitting the trails. And now I'm obsessed. I think finding hiking trails is, I do it almost alcoholically, if you will, because now I'm I want to find the next, beautiful spot. And I love to do it. I'm the only one in my house right now who likes to do it. Maybe if my kids get a little older, they'll join me. But, as far as what your question is, that's my spot to isolate. And I'll also say, some of my, best ideas and thoughts come when I'm alone and I'm exercising or I'm on a hike. And it was, I was at a conference about a year ago, and there was this amazing guy talking, and he was talking about spirituality and meditation. And I talked to him. I said, meditation is something I struggle with. I'll go through, great days or great stretches where I'm really doing it, and then I'll kind of fall off, and it upsets me. And as I was telling him this, I was describing my hiking, and he's like, that's a form of meditation when you're out in your nature and you're walking or you're sitting down, with your own thoughts. Like, that is a form of meditation. So I kind of added that to my to my itinerary, if you will, of when I do go on hikes. But that's what I do for me. That's my isolated spot.
Love it. Thank you, Gary. And just out of curiosity, I've never been to Long Island, and I just picture it as a bunch of high-rise buildings, the whole island big, and I'm sure that is not the entire picture. But what is your favorite spot now that you've hiked around there? What is the spot that when you think, there it is?
I live in the middle of Long Island called Huntington now, and there's a really good hiking trail really close here called Cold Spring Harbor. But one of the towns on the east end of Long Island. It's the very east end. It's called Montauk. And when I was younger and in the middle of my disease, that was a town I worked out every summer. I bartended, and it is I really kind of upped my debauchery, if you will. Like it was pedal to the metal every single summer. And now, as a sober man, it has become our favorite family vacation. We're going in a few weeks. This will be 5th year in a row, and there's amazing hiking trails out in Montauk. And these are trails I never hit when I was when I was young and out and active, like I said. So those are my two spots. I have one here that's close to home, and when I go out east, which is Montauk, and that's my favorite place, I think, period. I hit the trails there in Montauk. It's beautiful.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. If I ever get out there, I'll definitely.
Oh, you got to hit me up coming out here.
Oh, I will, brother. Thank you. All right. Next question comes from Everly. Everly asks, and this is a cool question. Do you view the Big Book as a manual, not just for sobriety, but also for life? And then the next part here is what's cool. If so, as your children get a bit older, would you consider sharing the Big Book and its power with them?
Can you repeat the beginning of it? I got the second part. I'm sorry.
The beginning. Okay. Do you view the Big Book as a manual, not just for sobriety, but also for life?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's my manual for life. And whenever I'm off course and whenever I'm drifting in a bad spot, it's all back in the Big Book. And I've read every single, self-help book there is out there. And I'm just into that stuff. I kind of always have been, and I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to improve my mindset. And it's funny to me that I'll read all this stuff and it always comes back for me to the Big Book. So that is without a doubt my manual. As far as sharing it with my children, 100%. I am going to do everything opposite that it was for me growing up. And I remember early on sharing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous with my girlfriend, who is my wife now. And she said to herself, wow, anyone could use these steps. These are really powerful. I don't think you even have to be, an alcoholic for these. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. But unfortunately, if you want to really dive into the steps, I think you have to, I guess she can come, but probably not actually. But anyway, so the point to that is yes. And because she answered that for me years ago. And yeah, I am going to share it. And it's funny you say that. They're, like I mentioned, they're 10 and 8, and we just went on a quick road trip, and, the topic of drugs came up, and we're in I drove them all around New York State, upstate New York. And the topic of drugs came up, and, I just, again, I was overcome with gratitude because we can sit here in the car, the four of us, and really discuss and have a real conversation. It's one of my biggest fears, obviously, is for our children, but I could discuss with them, the dangers of drugs and alcohol. And I even started opening up, and they know Dad doesn't drink. And I'm sure my 10-year-old knows a little more than she lets on. My 8-year-old, he's not ready to hear any of the stories just yet, but yes, I am absolutely going to be completely honest and open and upfront with them about their dad and about the dangers of this disease. And I'm absolutely going to show them the Big Book for sure.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And we've got a couple people from your area. I've got a couple comments about that. One of them says, check out the Delaware Water Gap on the New Jersey side. It's a great place for camping and hiking, by the way.
Will do.
And then Marianne says Cold Spring Harbor is the best. She's going there tomorrow. So
I saw that. I opened that. I got excited. That's why I need you to repeat the first part of the question. That's great, Marianne. I hope I see you there. Pat me on the shoulder. Let me know. Awesome. That's amazing. I go there a lot. I'll be there tomorrow too, actually, tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's Saturday.
Sweet. Very cool. All right. Next question comes in from an anonymous attendee. And this person says, you had a pretty traumatic childhood experience. What advice would you have to someone in recovery who struggles with releasing resentments from experiencing a traumatic childhood?
This is a great question, because this is one that took me a little while. But it's something that the steps do to us is we look at ourselves. So I remember the first time going through the steps and writing down my 4th step inventory. And it was the first time that I wrote any of this stuff down. It was the first time I shared this with another human being, step 5. And I remember thinking, like, wait till I write this stuff down. What did I do? I didn't do anything. What was my part in this? I didn't have any part. I was just there, and, lo and behold, yes, some of the stuff I was just there, but there is stuff that I can look at myself, and say, maybe I could have done better. And I say that, when I'm going through this, when I'm an adult this time, when you're a child, when you're a kid, I don't think I can answer this as a 10-year-old or even 15-year-old, but when you're an adult, you can, and this took me a while. And I was, resentful. I was resentful at my sponsor's answer to it, because it made me have to look at myself. But it's the stuff that I learned in here, and stuff that, AA has helped me learn, is that, you got to look at my side of the street. So there was times, maybe not when I was a child, but times, going forward, that I could have handled, and I could have been a better human being, or I could have handled better. And again, so yeah, I agree. There's been some trauma, and, I have a hard time even looking at it, to be honest with you, as a traumatic. Like, it was so ingrained in me. And I share that because there'll be times I'll be speaking with my wife, and sometimes, wherever it may be, and we bring up stuff and childhood stuff. And she's like, she's kind of like, you still don't even like really grasp it, or she's not sure if I don't want to, really accept it or go there or whatever it is. Maybe it's part of my defense mechanisms, but whatever it may be. And they bring up this other topic has been up a lot lately for me, is going to and doing some real strong therapy. It's just something I never did. My therapy has been AA. That's changed my life. But something that keeps popping up, and just this question maybe is popping up again for me, that maybe I should go really look at some of those things. But again, to answer your question, it's steps 4 and 5, and then again 6 and 7, and looking at my defects of character and the way I could have handled the situations differently. I realized how long ago? A while ago in sobriety, though, that I realized that the only person that is being harmed and hurt from these resentments is me. No matter what may have happened to me, I was the one holding it. And if I could look at some of the things that I saw, or some of the, things that were coming around in my house, whatever it was, and I held these stuff for so long. And I think that was part of my real addiction and alcoholism, because I had it in my back, I had it in my back pocket. I had it on my shoulder, chip my shoulder. Like, if you saw the stuff that I saw, you'd be like, you wouldn't, you can't possibly understand. But it dawned on me in sobriety that, I have to let this go. If I don't let this go, I'm not going to be healed. I'm not going to get better. And so, that's at the end of the day is what happened. And I let it go.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that, because, this is something that comes up often when I'm talking with people and I'm sponsoring and everything, and also past guests. And I've heard a lot of people say that they attended Adult Children of Alcoholics, ACA, 12-step fellowship, and gotten a lot of help from that, in addition to therapy and just being able to release and take, not responsibility for those things, but recognize, hey, I may not have been able to control what happened, but I can now make choices on how I will react and interact with others based on that than what I have carried. It's there's some good stuff there. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it, Gary. I have another question for you here, Gary. You mentioned that in 2006, before you went back to AA, you're like, I'm not ever going back to AA again. I don't want to do that. What was it that made you have that prejudice against AA at that point? What was your first experience like that turned you off to it?
My first experience was great. I think it was just me being a stubborn, I'm going to do it my way. That's how I was. There's still elements to that to me today, but I went in there. Listen, I wish my story was I went in and I never would look back, but that's just not my path. It's not my journey. But it was nothing at all against AA. I just, I think in those 4 years, it was a real struggle and it was a real battle, and it was in and out of AA. Like, I never even put 90 days together. I don't even put 90 days together from that initial rehab stint. Did 30 days there. I came back and I didn't even put 90 days together. And so I heard this too. And actually, my sponsor had said this just kind of off the cuff, and it wasn't talking directly to me, but this was me to a T. He said, we were engaged in a battle every single day and we didn't even know it. And that's how like those 4 years were. I was just like, it was in and out. It was battling everyone. My friends, they thought I was going AA and I was sober and I wasn't. And I turned on all of them and I didn't care. I didn't care about anybody. You were either on my side or you weren't on my side. And I really didn't care what side you were on. And I let everyone know that. That was just a real miserable. I wasn't like, that's not a way I'm naturally, I'm a kind of an outgoing. I love having people around me that I love. And I was, the polar opposite in those 4 years. And I didn't care, like I said, if you were with me or you were against me, it didn't matter to me. And I was, like I alluded to, I guess in my opener is, I really became isolated and I was a real isolator. So it wasn't anything at all inside of AA. And I think to AA's credit, when I really hit that spot, it wasn't like a rock bottom, but it was a mental maybe bottom, if you will. May 12th, 2006. But who did I call first? I called AA intergroup. We had the yellow pages, called, found it. I said, I need a meeting, and they helped me. I got to my first meeting in New York City in May 13th, 2006.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Gary, one of the things that you shared really hit me hard, and I'd never heard this. And it sounds like it's something that you've heard a lot in the rooms, but I haven't heard this, that I could walk around and put a sticker on everything that says property of AA, or this is because of AA, or because of my fellowship, my sobriety. Mm-hmm. When you said that, it just really hit me like, wow. And I just looked around my office here, looked out my window at the beautiful scenery that I'm looking out at. And I was like, yeah, this is because of the principles that I am striving to practice through recovery. Tell me a little bit more about that concept and how that brings gratitude into your life by recognizing that.
I mean, that is a complete 100% fact. And yeah, it's hard to say, but I could put those stickers on my children, because I wouldn't be married. I wouldn't have two beautiful kids. What I said too, when I was describing that, it's the real important stuff that I got back, like integrity and, words like responsibility. I didn't have that before. I didn't care. I didn't care about that stuff. I did before, but then when I was in the middle of my alcoholism, I didn't care anymore. And that has all been lifted. But yeah, so that concept, just look at me. Like, if I don't find AA for me, and I know other people have other ways of getting sober, and I God bless you. For me, AA saved my life. So if you look at everything, and I don't mean materially what I have, everything that I am as a person, I owe to AA, because all these principles were not how I grew up. And these are not these were not my principles, certainly when I was in my disease, but these are ones that I found. And these are ones that I try to live by. And I'll give you another example of and this is God's honest truth. And this might sound silly, or maybe this will resonate with someone. Honest to God, every time the phone rings, Justin, I have an instant sense of gratitude inside, because I'm able to answer that phone. Because for so long, every time the phone rang, I had anxiety and I couldn't answer it, and I didn't know who was calling me and who was looking for me and what did I do, and creditors or whoever it was. I couldn't answer the phone. And even as I stopped drinking in sobriety, I still couldn't answer the phone for so long, until I cleaned everything up in a way and dawned to me that, hey, I can answer the phone. And I'm 49 years old, and I'm telling you right now, phone rings, I have an instant, I just feel it really quick, and I smile, and I'm able to answer the phone the first call, because, God doesn't give us anything we can't handle. And listen, I'm not being, cocky, if you will, because there's going to be a bad phone call maybe one day, but it's a call that I'm able to answer the phone today. And I wasn't able to do that before. I wasn't capable of answering a phone. I
love that perspective. Miracles, man. And that's what this this recovery life is all about. Miracles, connecting with a higher power, connecting with others, and being able to do so with, standing up with my head high and my shoulders back and ready to, not arrogantly, like you said, but knowing that God isn't going to give me what I can't handle. What a beautiful thing that is. Thank you, Gary. All right. So before we start closing up here, one more reminder to everybody. I just want to invite you each to go check out Gary's podcast, the Begin Again podcast. I've put the link in the chat. I'll do it again here in the chat, and it'll be in the show notes of the podcast. Gary, is there anything else you want to share about that podcast, like what it's about, what it's like, and then we'll get to one final wrap-up question after that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for mentioning that and bringing it up, because it's super important to me. And this has all happened really, really quickly. And the word, podcast was not on my radar even 2 months ago. And now I'm like all in on a sober podcast, and which I think is beautiful. Like I said, the mantra is please let's help one person today. And it's not Gary, it's not me helping. It's the story. It's there to inspire. I feel like there's an element for people that, I say this a lot, actually. I mean, not to back up. I say this a lot. Like when I walk into an AA meeting, like there's not a big sign up there that says, come on in, you can completely change your life. And that's exactly what happened to me. And that's exactly what happened to everyone else that I know in AA. And now, like I said, I've been coming around for a while. I know a lot of people in there, that have completely changed their lives. And so the idea for the podcast, the Beginning in podcast, is just that, is to hopefully hear a story and to really drive home that, if you find sobriety, if you find a higher power, we'll keep it just this way. If you find sobriety, you not only, when I first, I thought my life was over. I thought my life was completely over in 2006, because I gave up. I'm like, all right, I'm losing my friends. It's going to be tough. I'm losing this. I'm not going to be able to further my career where I work. So I'm going to have to figure all this up. But it was complete nonsense. And it was I was completely wrong about all of it. So the essence of the podcast is to help people realize that, find sobriety, but you can completely change your life, and you can change your family's life for the better. And, yes, it starts with finding sobriety, but I think people I know I'm speaking for how I was early on. Like people can benefit from hearing stories of people that have completely changed their lives. And maybe they went on to start a business, or wherever they are, running a company, or got a job, whatever it may be, that message can really resonate and inspire. And that's the gist of it, that, find sobriety, that you can completely change your life. And that's what I'm hoping the guests and the guests have been incredible. Like I said, I just started, and the people I'm meeting so fast have been incredible. And I'm repeating myself. I apologize, but that's the gist of it. I want people to realize that find sobriety. Not only do you have to stop, you have to stop drinking, which is a beautiful thing, to find out, but, your life is far from over. It's just beginning. You're beginning again, and you can completely change your life for the better, and your families.
Thank you so much, Gary. Yeah, I invite everybody to go check that podcast out again. Before we close up, Gary, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
This is certainly an AA theme. And if there's anyone out there struggling, I'm a big believer in KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, because that resonates for this thick-headed guy. But, early on, we can overthink things. It's an easy program for complicated people. I'm a big believer in that as well. But don't drink, go to meetings one day at a time. And if you're struggling, listen to people in those rooms, call someone. There's so much support out there. Go to a meeting. You can totally change your life around. And I bring up don't drink and go to meetings, because I held on to that for so long at the beginning. And little did I know, I just touching on it, I thought my life was over. It was just beginning. Little did I know. So don't drink and go to meetings, and reach out to people. There's tons of resources. I know you have tons of resources on your website. There's resources on my website, and there's plenty out there. You don't have to be alone. You can completely change your life.
Thanks again, Gary. That was a great RECO 12 weekly speaker meeting. And to our audience, if you have other questions, please consider joining our WhatsApp community by sending an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. We'll get you set up in there where you can ask questions, ask other people's questions that may come up. And also, if you are inspired from this share and want to share something of your insights in a 12-step type share, please consider going to RECO 12 Shares SpeakPipe link and record your 3 to 4 minute share there. And if you have not yet rated and reviewed this podcast or any of the other RECO 12 resources that we've got out there, please go do so now. It's a great way to work step 12 in sharing this message with others. I invite the audience to come back next week. Next week, we'll be hearing from Rachel W., and we're excited to have that conversation with her. And let's see. Yeah, so let's launch off into the rest of our day with the prayer of St. Francis that Gary will say for us. Have at it, Gary.
Thank you again. Thanks again so much for having me today. It's a beautiful thing, what you're doing here, the work you're doing. So it was a real privilege to be here. I'm so happy I heard someone from Cold Spring Harbor here too. Hope I see you on the trail. So here's the prayer, peace prayer of St. Francis. Lord, making me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen. There is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. Let's trudge this happy road of destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. Falling in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. So far away from home. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place. And I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. Can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low, but now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.